So today I'm going to have this conversation with Supryia Sharma. She is an Indian consultant, but with an impressive background. She worked in Nigeria, United States, Italy, and well, now back to India. And let's see what we can figure out through the eyes of Supryia and take this conversation in order to develop somehow our views on the new normal. Hello, Supryia. How are you?
Hi, Tiago. Nice to be with you here. I'm doing very well. How are you today?
I'm fine. We are trying to deal with this whole economic recovery here in Brazil, and I think as well in India and all around the world. And we are taking these interviews to try to figure out how is this upcoming new normal going to be. And the first question that I like to ask Supryia is, as a kind of a beginning of the forecasting of foresighting, what is your first impression when you think about a possible new normal after the coronavirus crisis?
So, as is very relevant based on the style of working we have accustomed ourselves to these days, I think the new normal is more about being technology friendly. I have examples of people I have been working with who weren't at all acquainted with the technology, things like Zoom. And they were in fact fearful of starting to use such technological advancements. However, with the time they have grown and they have started using things, and they find that with this, they have made sure that their business and their work does not suffer even in situations like what we are in now. Because in a pandemic like this, when we are not allowed to go out, we are confined within our houses, you can just be sitting at home and cut yourself off from the entire business if you are not technology friendly. But thanks to technology, not only Zoom, there are new softwares like Lark also that are coming up, which are providing free meetings. In fact, you don't even have to be a premium member in order to have unlimited meetings. You can go with Lark and you can just go on having meetings without compromising on the services that you're providing to your customers or your clients.
So in this new normal, probably the so-called early adopters are going to be no more like that. Everybody's going to be, in a way, an early adopter.
Oh, well, yes, that's an interesting perspective. I see everyone now as being at the top of the curve, what we call the normal curve. I see everybody being at the top of the curve because whether you like it or not, we all have adopted to the changes that we were supposed to in order to survive or in order to thrive in the current situation like this pandemic. And in fact, I'll be very honest with you, I'm a laggard and not at all an early adopter. So if an iPhone comes to the market, by the time iPhone 11 is out, I'm still on iPhone 7. So I am a laggard.
Me too.
But yes, I am happy to say that even people like the ones who are providing the services of the gym coaches and the people like fitness freaks, they are also providing virtual services. In fact, I subscribed to a dance class also last week, though I did not get a time to attend to that one, but I was surprised. Okay, a dance class via Zoom or it's online. Amazing. Let me see how this goes. So the new normal for people is also about a change in taste or being willing to try new things, which they did not. So I think when we get back to work, we would be willing to take more risk or take on more challenges and try things which we never tried to see how those things taste and whether we can be compatible with those or we cannot.
Yes, and that's already is a change in behavior, because we are trying to discover what kind of changes we are going to have for good. I mean, what changes that came to stay, including after the lockdowns and so on. You have worked with you already work with customer success, and so I would like to ask you something on customer behavior. But let's try to discuss how do you see customer behavior changing throughout these different countries. For example, if we take the United States, India, Nigeria, Italy, four countries that you know, that you work there, do you see differences today in behavior on the demand side? I mean, on customer behavior. Can you see something already happening, and what are your perspectives on it?
Wonderful. You very rightly pointed out that there's an abrupt change in the consumer behavior. Let me start with something in India, because this is what we're experiencing right now. So we have a festival in India which is called the Akshaya Tritiya. Though I'm an Indian, but because of my global upbringing, I would say I am not very well versed with the history and the mythology of our culture. But I know there is a festival called Akshaya Tritiya. It just passed 2-3 days back. And what happens on this day is we buy gold jewelry, which is a sign of bringing prosperity to your homes.
Okay.
That's the idea associated with it. And here in India, we would never ever buy gold jewelry online. It is always by visiting the showrooms and by looking at yourself with what are the designs available and what are the options that we finalize on the decision-making process. But this time, since it was a complete lockdown, we are not allowed to go out at all. All the major jewelers in India, like the PC jewelers, Kalyan jewelers, all of them came up with a strategy that, okay, let's put up our jewelry online. And this is the first time in India that I have seen that people are buying jewelry online, because they have to keep up with the tradition. So they would be buying jewelry on that day. And at the same time, they have to adhere to the mandate by the government not to go out of their houses for unnecessary work. So the shops are not open. The only option is to buy online. And that's what we did. That's a change in consumer behavior. I mean, something which we would never ever buy online, because it's a huge investment involved.
And this is an example. Yeah, and this is an example that may change for good, because the next year, since you already did it 2020, 2021, probably, if not everybody, but probably somehow many people are going to again buy through the internet.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm researching on this, and I found, based on the forecast, that at least 20% of the people who bought gold jewelry online this time are going to have another experience of doing so. Because definitely it's comfortable to be sitting at home and choosing the thing you want to buy and just order it. Though it's common with things like grocery we do, but we never did it with high value items like this. But I think since we have done it the first time, at least 20% of the people are going to repeat the same experience.
Yeah. And what are the news you have in Nigeria, for example?
In Nigeria. So we have a lockdown in Nigeria. However, I was conducting a webinar the other day for the same subject, as in what is going to be the business strategy going forward. And the greatest change we've seen there is there were some manufacturing plants which weren't technologically advanced. However, with the coming in of this COVID, they have very quickly adapted to change, and they have brought in new technology which helps their people sitting at home to be able to manage the manufacturing operations with least amount of people actually being present in the factory. That was something really surprising for me as I was discussing with my participants from Nigeria.
So there are some companies moving fast then.
Yeah, they're moving faster. I mean, I never expected such fast adoption, because while I worked, it's always that inertia. People want to do the things the way they have been doing for years, which is the way human beings are, most of us. So it's difficult to convince them to adapt to change and adopt something new. But this time, since the situation demands them to do so, otherwise they will perish, this is the only option. And I'm glad they have adopted to this one.
So this is a changing in behavior on the managers.
On the managers, absolutely.
And what do you see, because you worked for Westinghouse, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we are consulting for Westinghouse.
You're still advising them. Okay. So what can you tell us on these big companies, multinationals? They are quite slow in making change because of their size, comparing, for example, to startups. How do you see these big companies moving in different directions nowadays?
Absolutely. Here, so in physics, we used to study the larger the body, the more is the force required to move it. So you already made a mention of that. Because of the size of these companies, it's not easy for them to bring in something new. And of course, with the amount of huge capital investment involved. So from the technological point of view, I have not seen any change as of now. However, what we have seen is that the way they are strategizing themselves is to gear up perfectly for the new normal. And the new normal here in this case, coming out of the pandemic, as we all are going to be, is about focusing more on cleaner sources of energy.
Okay.
Mitigating the climate change. Yeah.
Oh,
so that's see a huge potential for nuclear, and they are all geared up to take on that market once we are out of this lockdown.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you are familiar too, but I am listening some executives speaking about in terms of maybe also a globalization, a new globalization strategy. I'm listening some executives speaking about moving their plants, their manufacturing plants, to different countries in order to not being dependent, for example, on China, as we could see this 20 years ago. So maybe we are going to face a spread of different manufacturing plants across the world in different countries in order to improve resilience and to have a more reliability structure, production structure. Do you have any views on that?
So if I got you correctly, you're talking about how resilient the business model of the companies is. Is that what you're aiming at?
I'm speaking about in order to not be as dependent as they are today from manufacturing plants based in China. For example, United States moved lots of their production to China. So in order to become more independent, I mean, this coronavirus put in front of many executives the comparison between the cost reduction, but also the resilience of their global production lines. I mean, you could have lots of improving in your efficiency with, for example, cost reduction, working with a much cheaper labor force, for example. But now they are facing that they are dependent on this region. So I hear some news from the United Kingdom, for example, and as well from the USA, that they are thinking about in this next chapter, in this new normal, to spread away through different regions and having not all the production lines set in China, for example, but in 2 or 3 different countries. Just as we do with data when we have a server in one country and another server in another country, you know?
Yeah, I'm in fact 100% in alignment with that. Companies are looking at moving their production plants from some of the popular Asian countries where they have a lot of manufacturing facilities, their offshore manufacturing facilities, so to say, to bring closer to home, to reduce their dependency. And especially in this scenario, we have been hearing so much about the pharmaceutical industry, how the United States is facing a crisis on the pharma products and how they want to bring this manufacturing into their own country so they are not dependent on others. Well, while I'm aligned with this, at the same time, I also feel that it won't be sustainable for long. Because once we are out of the lockdown and we start working on these strategies that, okay, let's bring the production as close to us as possible. At the same time, I feel there's going to be a trade-off between the cost, as you mentioned earlier, and the resilience involved. So the companies will have to probably see for 3 to 4 years before they can actually decide on what is going to be the next step.
Okay. Yeah, because we saw a great focus on efficiency these past years. Well, not these past years, but the traditional model for any company is driving cost reduction efforts and trying to improve processes, increasing margins and so on. So the very first focus always in performance and efficiency. But now I think for this new normal, we are going to be aware of resilience as well, and not only to develop as much efficiency you can, but simultaneously trying to figure out how you can turn your company into, like Nassim Taleb called, an anti-fragile company. Anti-fragile, I mean, that can take the opportunity, whatever crisis you face, or being stronger with all this uncertainty and fast-pacing change world.
So here I have this idea of being innovative. The companies are being more innovative with this break in the supply chain that we are facing, the global supply chain now. Look at the ventilators. I mean, who would have thought that the automakers or the auto manufacturers would be asked to manufacture ventilators? But that's what's happening. At least I know of Germany, Italy, India. We are asking our automobile manufacturers to help us with the ventilators because that's what we need in this hour. That's, I think, innovation, and that's making the best use of the resources that we have. The companies have learned to do it now because of the condition they are in.
Yeah, shifting operations and fast and trying to adapt. Let's speak a little bit about services, Supryia. I know that India is a huge player in, for example, IT services. How do you face the future of software development and IT services in the new normal?
I'm only bothered about the servers of the world with the way all of us are using the data. Nothing worries me more than that. Because we as human beings, we can go on innovating, bringing in the best of technology for the use of human beings. But at the end of the day, we require to be connected all over the world. Like you mentioned, India is the provider of IT services to globally, I mean, to countries around the globe. So yes, we are still able to do that sitting here in India, thanks to technology. But again, talking about sustainability and talking about the effects this data, the use of data has on climate change, that worries me a lot. Because think of Netflix or YouTube. When we are streaming videos or streaming songs or anything that we are watching on Netflix or YouTube or any other channels for that matter, we are consuming zillions of data. And that is contributing a lot to the carbon footprint. On one hand, we are talking about the current situation as a triple crisis, where we are saying we have a health crisis, we have a financial crisis, and we also have an environmental crisis because of the climate change. On the other hand, while we are mitigating the financial crisis by continuing the business and the services over the internet from one country to another, we are contributing negatively to the climate change. So that environmental crisis is on the rise, I think, in this case.
Yeah, I see that the COVID-19 was a shock for everybody, and we began to speak about the coming back to normality, or as we are using the term, to a new normal. But we could also reflect on this topic, asking if we did previously have a normal situation, because maybe this so-called normality wasn't that normal. We already
Mhm.
have, we already had many problems. We were struggling with very tough situations. For example, in Brazil, we were struggling with unemployment already, for example, and a political crisis as well. And I think that both our countries are huge economies. I think India is the fifth biggest economy in the
Mhm.
world, but we have also a per capita low income and
Right.
lots of problem in infrastructure, for example. So we weren't in that normal situation, even though we use this word, but we don't want, I think, to come back to that normality. So this new normal is also a desire for a better future. Let me ask you something. How would you like to be? How would you like to see a new normal situation? What would be the main changes in the world if you could define it? The main topic.
Mhm. If I could, I would always stray away from the economic topics, and I would always go to the peace and serenity across the globe. I mean, this condition right now we are in is like a third world war, and we never expected this to happen. So, with the new technology adoptions that we are doing, I would also want us to live in harmony with all the countries that we are, almost 200 of us here on Earth. Well, talking of the economics part of it. So that is about the economies or the countries making sure on a macroscopic level how they make an intelligent blend of the monetary policy and the fiscal policy that they're adopting. So that is what I'm looking at. Like you said, we had a normal previously. We don't know whether it was normal or it wasn't. It looked like normal or it sounded like normal. And the new normal we are talking about has to be something definitely better than that. And that is a future I look at where people don't have to beg or people don't have to be deprived of 2 square meals a day. I look at a future where at least everyone has some kind of employment. I look at a future where every child in the world has a right to education. That is what I'm looking at. And I believe somehow that when we are out of this lockdown, the kind of policies that are going to come from the governments in order to enhance liquidity for the small businesses and large businesses, and at the same time, special plans for mitigating the unemployment and the trouble that the poor people have faced. I'm definitely expecting something better to come up. A
Nice.
decline in corruption is definitely here, a part of it.
Yeah, it is for sure something that we all want to see, not only for public leaders, but across every single individual who can become much more responsible for its own action, I think. What would be your recommendations for business leaders, Supriya, in order to, well, to drive this this behavior and to open this path for a better future? What would be your recommendations?
My only recommendation here is empathy. The moment in an official scenario or in terms of business, we are able to understand each other and we are able to exactly figure out the point where we are coming from, life would be much simpler and all of us would progress. And I think this situation of coronavirus or the COVID-19, as we call it, has enhanced those feelings of empathy among us. I'll just move out of the official scenario and I'll talk about the personal life here. when we were very busy with our jobs and our businesses and our schools, we would not even bother to see who is around us. Meaning, we don't know if there is a street dog who needs to be fed or if there is any other animal. No, we weren't bothered. We were just concerned about ourselves. Now, when we are at home and we have a lot of time to give to ourselves, we also have time to give to people around us. Not only people, I mean any living being. For that matter, you must have seen everyone is talking about growing more trees these days, planting saplings, feeding the animals around them, and taking care of the animals who do not have home. So this, I think, has instigated that feeling of compassion and kindness among people in their personal lives, which, coming back to the new normal in their business lives, would also showcase itself in the form of empathy with their colleagues.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. We would love to see more of that in the next coming months. And maybe this crisis is not only an economic shock, but also as a psychological shock, changing most of our beliefs and assumptions for the whole life. Well, it was a really nice conversation, Supryia. I love to talk to you. If you have any final message, and if you want to speak something specifically for your Indian colleagues and fellows, what would you say to Asia in general and to India specifically?
My message actually stays constant because I feel the world is my family in this case. And we are all together, regardless of whether we are Indians or Americans or British or Chinese, whosoever we are all one in this scenario, and we are supporting each other in the best way as we can. And going forward, my message to everyone is stay calm, stay safe, and see you at the new normal.
Oh, nice. Okay. Thank you. And let's keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely, Tiago. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.